welcome to everybody on this really lovely night when we're celebrating Margot's book, Almost Then, second novel. Really thrilled to be publishing it. And I just want to say congratulations to Margot. It's an absolutely wonderful book. And I'm delighted to be here to have this celebration of the start of the journey as it goes on its way. So welcome to all of you. The housekeeping bit is that you're welcome to have your video on or off. You'll have your mics muted, but Chania up there, who's our technical wizard up there, is going to turn mics on and off when they're needed. We're going to have the format of questions from me, answers from Margot, readings, and at the end, we'll take questions from all of you or some of you or anyone who wants to ask Margot. We may break that completely and do something else if questions crop up that Margot would like to ask along the way. So we're playing it by ear and it's very flexible. So why did I pick up this book? I wonder whether some of you are going to ask me that anyway. I get between 7 and 10 submissions a week at Linen Press. And I haven't said who I am. I'm Lynn Michelle and I run Linen Press. And I've run it since 2005, so about 15 years now. So I get between about 7 and 10 submissions a week. And I was doing a quick count. In those years, I've only taken to publication, I think 9 books. So it's a long shot. Margot has leapt over all those hurdles and got through all the barriers that I put up. I get a lot of submissions in, but really very few that are good enough to make it through to publication. We only publish 3 or 4 books a year. We lean towards literary fiction, memoir, biography. Really exceptional writing is what I'm looking for, and that's what I found when I picked up Almost Then. So what appealed to me was the original narrative voice, which you will hear when Margot starts to read. Then the very strong sense of place, which I personally love in a novel, very tangible sense of place that Margot creates, and it's there right through the story. It's beautifully written, it's assured, it's confident, it's authentic. I think that's the word I'd apply to it. It's an authentic narrative voice, and Margot sustains it right the way through. And the whole has a structural and emotional integrity, which I don't often find. A lot of writers start off really well, and then the writing falls apart or it goes off the rails, but Margot has an integrity that just stays with us all the way through. It's quite a dark novel. I remember I picked it up in the spring, and I used to go, the submissions I really like, I print out, and then I go somewhere nice to read them. So I remember with Margot's, I was lying in the hammock, and I was swinging in my hammock outside in the trees. I was reading this really quite challenging book, but it kept me going, and I kept turning the pages. So I associate it with the hammock, Margot. You're the hammock book. So it really, I had to keep reading it, and that was the start, wasn't it? On we went. So now, I had one here a minute ago. It's vanished. There we are. And I'm going to, Margot's got one too. I'm going to hand over to Margot to say a little bit about herself and the book and whatever she wants to say. She's not short of words, I'm sure.
I've gone all shy, Lynn. I'm really. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody taking the time to come along. I know that digital events can be a bit like work events these days because we spend a lot of our lives in front of screens. So I really do appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you're enjoying a little glass of wine while we talk about books, which is one of my very favourite subjects. So, and thanks to Lynn too, obviously for taking a punt and publishing almost then, because like she said, you know, in terms of narrative voice and stuff, it is a little bit different, and a lot of publishers wouldn't take a chance on a novel like this. But yeah, so this is my second novel. Oh, there's a fox in my garden. This is my second novel, and I'm also a filmmaker, but writing, I guess, is another version of filmmaking because I do it with a very much a visual approach, which I hope you will see when you get to read the book. And if you have read it already, I think hopefully you'll understand what I mean by that. But I think, you know, in terms of me introducing myself, I guess Lynn's kind of done most of that anyway. She's maybe very shy and very humbled. So I guess I would like to just maybe kick off with some reading and just really getting into the nitty gritty of this book because that's why we're all here. So I think Lynn, you had some ideas of where you wanted to start, and I hope it's where I think you're going to start because I've got number
Well,
one by a certain subject.
how about we start with a sense of place, Margot?
Good idea. Whew, that worked out okay. Yeah, so like Lynn said, a sense of place really is integral to the narrative. Um, and it's not so much just about the physicality of the surroundings. It's it's about it being part of who the characters are. You know, the home doesn't exist without them, and vice versa. It's very much about roots and about belonging, and belonging in a sense that you know, is more than about just family and connection. It's about something deeper than that. It's about a kind of physical at one with the earth. And I think that's the way both Rathlin and Bracken feel about Ballyknoe. Ballyknoe is the house that they grew up in Kintyre. It's a fictitious place in Kintyre, but it's a place that I spend a lot of time looking over at from my house in Rathlin Island, which has a connection in here as well. Anyway, I better start reading, eh? So this is from chapter 11, and I've abridged it so that you don't need to go through it all. At the foot of the hill, Rathlin squints up at the house. She's running her fingers along her ribs, pressing them deeply into her skin in response to her quickening breath. She closes her eyes, straining to hear her mother's call to come inside. When she hears it, she lets her 12-year-old legs carry her past the door and into her mother's arms. She's holding herself there. She comes back from almost then and steps back, one step, then two. She can see the house clearly. Despite the passing of years, it never really changes. It is tall and white. The paint under the window frames and beneath the guttering is flaking, but Ballyknoe is still glistening. The blue-black tiles of the roof have captured the west light, and the colour is anchored, ancient voices settling into its mast. Rathlin knows the chatter will intensify when night falls, and the lighthouse sweeps towards it, swaying on the edge of a roofless sea. The house is 2.5 stories high, the attic windows protruding like watchful eyes, the border of the house painted a foot high in green paint that matches the frames of the window ledges and the wooden slats of the porch. Rathlin pauses, remembering a lengthy discussion between Mum and Dad before the paint was added. Mum had said it would be pretty. Dad said it would be a pain to maintain. They were both right, and she wonders if she and Bracken will ever replenish the paint to its previous richness. She rolls her eyes, knowing that there's much more than paint to sort. She forges on, an excitement building despite everything. She attacks the hill with as much gusto as she can gather, thrusting her heels into the thick bracken, her determined steps towards home efficient and deliberate. Her focus is fixed firmly on the earth that is lifting her into the softening sky. Molly is running alongside her, free of the city restrictions, darting in and out of long grass. She can see that Bracken is still watching, his frame resting on the basalt rock high above the house. He has pushed his spine tightly against the hillside, and he looks majestic, as if he was resting on a stone throne carved into the backbone of the mountain. The twins arrive at the front door of Ballyknoe at the same time. Their embrace is needy. They collapse into one another as if the lumberjack has called timber from deep within the forest. The house behind them is still and quiet. Rathlin moves away first, leaning back so she can look at Bracken. Molly is seeking attention, but Rathlin gently pushes her aside so she can concentrate on her twin. How goes it? She wraps her arms around his neck, clinging on for a second before releasing her grip. She kisses him gently on the cheek, the contact bringing a rush of blood. She is home. The feeling is both warm and chilling. Bracken responds with a smile and then a worried glance. I'm good, but are you sure you're okay? Aye. Rathlin smiles, extinguishing any tension before it can settle. There is a dull ache filling her chest. Its flush is familiar. The silence that follows, though, is comforting. They stroll quietly into the house. Their surroundings are yawning, waking up to greet them. The siblings part company in the hall, their inner selves directing them to their own spaces to gather strength for the days ahead. Molly watches as the twins siphon off. She circles, lying down in the hall, creating a bridge across there forever. So that's the place.
Margot, I want to add something to the word place. It's not just about place, it's so much about roots and belonging and a sense of knowing where your home is. This whole book, it gives out this a knowledge that the twins know exactly where they belong. And I wonder if your own background and your own roots have contributed a lot to you putting this into the story, this sense of being rooted in a place and the importance of having those roots down in the ground there.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. For people that don't know, although we are born and brought up in Glasgow, my father's from Rathlin Island, which is mentioned in here, and it's been very much part of my life since well, since forever. I went to the island first when I was a tiny baby, and it very quickly became, it's what you aspire to all year round. I mean, back in the early days, you couldn't nip off to Ireland every 5 minutes. It was very much a kind of tortured waiting all year round for summer. But it's what, as a child, that I yearned for, like, constantly. And there's something about the island that does feel that it's home. Um, it is very much about roots, and whether that's about heritage or whether it's about family or
Mm,
whether it's about land or connection or just an absolute mix of all of that, there's something there definitely that's extremely strong,
yes.
to the extent that subsequently I built my own home in the island, and it's where I'm going to see out my days. So yeah, and I think um, my relationship with the island, I think, is very much how Rathlin and Bracken feel about their place. That connection about it being more than just bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
It's actually physically part of who they are, and they both find it difficult to exist without it. But at the same time, as you'll find out when you read the book, there are aspects of it that make it very hard for them both to exist within it.
And there are the houses. I don't know whether you can see, if I hold this up, this is inside the book. The two houses, they're almost like characters. And they look at each other slightly aslant. And it's like a mirror image of the twins looking at each other slightly aslant. And
Yeah.
houses are there like people through the novel. Is that how you created them?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are very much aspects of the twins' character. Um, and I think there's different, albeit they're twins, but they're also individuals too. So they've got different, different personalities and different things that maybe they're stronger or weaker on. So I think in a sense, the houses do have little bits of both of them. Obviously their initial bond is to Ballyno. The other house, they don't have as warm a familiarity with it, but it's very much part of who they both are. I don't want to say too much about that
Yes.
because I guess when you get into that, you kind of find out
I know I'm being very careful about spoilers.
uh, yeah, but definitely that, it's kind of like looking at the two of them. But I think also as well the characters, they both, to me, are of the land and of the sea and of the air. I think there's aspects of their characters, of their personality, of their looks, which you could very much associate with their environment and see parts of them in the world around them.
There is some beautiful description of place in the novel. I have to
Thank
stop
you.
every so often and reread the way Margot describes a place, a detail, a landscape, a view of the sea, whatever. It's beautifully intertwined with the story all the way through. The narrative has this very strong descriptive presence, and we're there with the twins. And I'm going to move on to the twins now, Margot.
Okay.
Twins, family relationships, they sit very deep in this story. Love and lies and secrets and flaws and actions and repercussions. And at the heart of the book, is the family, and at the heart of the family are the twins. So we have Rathlin and we have Brecken. Margot said she calls him Brecken. Why the twins, Margot? How did you and why did you create these two that are so close and part of one another?
Well, I am a twin, which I think obviously plays a significant part in that because of my own experiences. Um, I always say that being a twin is being a family within a family because there's a certain something about that relationship between twins which I think is different. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm very close with my siblings, but I think myself and my twin brother, um, as children, we were very much in each other's pockets. We were very together. So that relationship between twins has always really fascinated me. Um, and also our differences, but our similarities. And I think there's something really kind of unique about how two people can be born at the same time of the same mother and then develop into these two sort of quite unique but quite similar people. So I think it was always going to have to be about twins because I think there's a lot of tragedy in this book because I don't really seem to be able to write anything other than tragedy. Um, but I think for that to really be as impactful as it is, it happening to twins just seemed to give it just a little bit more depth. I think there's a drama in the heart and pain that I think to me just feels a bit more soulful because of their relationship from birth.
You create a tremendous closeness. We feel the longing and the belonging between those two. And it's such a strong thread that goes right through. I won't say any more either for fear of giving too much away. Are you going to read about the
Yeah,
twins?
okay, I will
Okay.
do. I'm going to do a little reading here, and so this is when the twins were actually born. Just a little backflash chapter that goes back to when they were born. And in this chapter, Bracken isn't actually called Bracken because originally his parents were going to call him something else. And the reason that he's called Bracken is explained later on in the chapter. So if I say Bara, don't think who the hell is she talking about. Um, yeah, so this is when they're born, and they were actually born in the house in Ballyknoe. So that's another reason why it is so significant to them, along with the fact that it's where they shared what was probably the best part of their lives with their parents. Anyway, so this is Rathlin and Bracken, who isn't really Bracken yet. In the beginning, the twins are separated for 20 minutes and 20 seconds, an absence in their lives that hangs as crisply as a shirt on a washing line in winter. Rathlin presses forward first. She seals her entrance to the world with the faintest hint of a smile, rather than a powerful inflation of lungs, and for a brief moment, Rathlin's mother soars above the pain. The knowledge is carved deeply inside her, as neat as cut peat. Her daughter will take the world by the scruff of the neck and fly. For the moment, on that first day, Rathlin is as silent as a freshly dug rock. Her hair is as black as a raven, the fluffy down as soft as a nest of island mist. Her skin is like a whiteness of swans, her face pale and narrow, large dark eyes taking centre stage as they scan new horizons. She quickly senses her brother's absence and in preparations for him joining her, tenses her arms. The twins' mother, Skye Isabella Doherty, has fire-red hair that reaches the small of her back, its curling edges broken like bracken that mats the forest floor, its tresses now cloaking her shoulders, its vibrancy darkened with sweat. Skye is running her finger along Rathlin's slender cheek, the white of her palm caressing the underside of her daughter's long, thin jaw. She's rolling her body to the side, the mattress rippling like an oncoming swell and tipping Rathlin's nest momentarily into the air. As one takes flight, the other sways, and a fraction away from a loving kiss, their path changes mid-air. Barra is going nowhere and coming nowhere even faster. Rathlin is calling out, her cry a high-pitched squawk, an explosive shrill to alert her mother to the fact that her twin is penned in and thrashing around, drowning in his own self-doubt. Her brother's continuing reluctance to join her is threatening to permanently blur the edges between his new life and his old world. Instinctively, Rathlin can sense the danger. With Rathlin's warning circling recklessly, they begin to haul her brother from the depths. Flapping and gasping, he's fighting against the cold metal forceps hooking his temples. For just a moment, he lies still, understanding that he can't escape the chilling crunch of the midwife's pincers. He's willing them to slice his slender neck and take his head, anything to continue to swell in the warm ocean of his mother's womb. When the forceps crash into the tin basin positioned precariously on the wooden chest at the end of the bed, they bring something amazing with them. The wave of blood rolling furiously is stunning, thick and dark like a forest of underwater kelp, but it is Rathlin's twin that is the thing of real beauty. 20 minutes and 20 seconds after the birth of his sister, Rathlin's brother is thrust reluctantly into his new world. The shock to his system and his lingering determination to enjoy a bit of independence from Rathlin hits him hard. When the forceps withdraw, he flops lifelessly onto the bed, his mother pulling her legs towards her chin in response, pushing her back against the oak headboard ingrained with voyages of other lives on other journeys, her sticky hair clinging to its stories. Rathlin is the next to move, her arm unfolding from her chest, her body gliding forward. The baby boy is entwined with his sister in an instant, and with that motion he opens his lungs, his skin pinking, and his fingers and toes curling as he reluctantly cries out to announce his arrival. That's my twins.
And Rathlin, throughout the story, she recalls that moment, doesn't she, Margot?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much part of Rathlin because as the older sister, albeit by 20 minutes, she feels incredibly protective over her brother. And with that, she feels a responsibility to protect him. And it's that protection of her brother that kind of is one element of the secrets and lies that begins to push the twins apart through no fault of their own, really. They've both had to take some quite difficult decisions, and the decisions are made because of their bond and they don't want to hurt one another. Yeah, so she's very protective of little Bracken.
Is my memory playing tricks, or is it Rathlin that does that remembering rather than Bracken? I don't.
Yeah, Rathlin does. Yeah, it's Rathlin that does the remembering. Right. Bracken's a kind of different character, you know. He's just kind of going about his life. He's got his own issues, but Rathlin is definitely the deep thinker who is always looking at the bigger picture and you know how everything has impacted them from birth until now. She kind of lives with that responsibility of his birth.
She does.
Feels that very deeply.
That's a really nice way of putting it, that she lives with the responsibility of being the elder sister by, 20 minutes? But she lives with that. And
it's no coincidence that I'm 20 minutes older than my twin, which is actually quite a long time.
Right, okay, let's move on. We could talk about twins forever. I'd like to go to the voices. it's unusual. The way you've written this novel is unusual in that Ratlin and the other strong female character, Ellen, they have two voices each. So Ratlin has her now and her then voices, which relates to the title almost then. Well, perhaps you can explain better, Margot, that she is approaching so often then, but she stops before she gets there. And
Yeah.
again, she goes back and she approaches and she's almost at then, and she stops and she goes back. So you're interweaving now voices and then voices. They're both Ratlins. With Ellen, she has two voices as well. She has an inner voice and an outer voice, and the two play off each other. One questions the other, one answers the other. It's quite complex, but it's partly that makes it an original and a compelling read, that you're understanding that inside each of our heads, there isn't a very straightforward single monologue. There are voices that are holding debates and arguing and batting off one another, but you make it explicit by giving those two characters two voices each. So, how did you come about? How did you decide to do that? And how did you work it? Because it's quite difficult. It's difficult to pull off two characters with two voices.
How did I decide to do that? Probably, I probably can't answer that because I think I just had to do that because that's how the characters emerged. I think for Rathlin, her now and then voices are kind of what's keeping her safe. You know, she can't go to then because then she's going to be in a place that she doesn't want to be. But um, she's almost always going there.
Yes.
Um, just to kind of put it a little bit more in context, when Rathlin and Bracken are 12 years old, there's an accident that happens which completely changes their life, and kind of leads to where they're at here. Both of it, you know, there's a grief within the both of them that changes how they deal with life and how they interact with one another. And for Rathlin, I think first of all for Bracken, you know, he's still there. He's still in Ballyknoe, so he's still in his environment. So he's never stepped away from it. So it's just always there. It's always part of who he is. But because Rathlin is forced to leave Ballyknoe and she has to go to the city, um, and she's almost always wanting to go back, but there's part of her that doesn't allow her to go back. And when I say go back, I mean in terms of memory, in terms of entering a space that she's not really sure why she can't fully commit to going back to it. And obviously that becomes more understandable as the book goes on. But there's always part of her that is living this kind of dual existence. There's the Rathlin who's had to adapt to life post 12 years old, and then there's the Rathlin who can't bear not being that little girl anymore and still wants to be part of that life, but she knows there's something in that life that makes it too dangerous for her to actually engage with at a sort of fully conscious level. So her engagements between her now and then voices are always at a subconscious level. I think there's one exception in the book where she properly is remembering something, but more often or not, she's very much. It's when she's fallen asleep or when she's not fully conscious of her day to day activities, she sort of drifts off there, and she almost always brings herself back.
When,
Um, but
when I was
sorry,
reading, when I was reading it, Margot, I experienced it as quite physical, that she was walking towards that past place and then she stopped herself and back she went. And I know it's emotional and I know it's in her head, but I experienced it quite physically. I was with her. She, it was an approach withdrawal thing, and she would get so far down the path and then literally stop. And then, no, no,
yeah,
no, don't go there, don't go there, come back.
yeah,
And
she's sort of physically going on a journey when she's in that other space. that kind of subconscious place. You know, she's physically moving, physically taking herself to the edge of the forest, into the forest, and
Yes.
never quite to that space, which is almost then. She just really doesn't want to be then. She wants to be here and now. Um, but it's a real dichotomy for her because she wants to be part of her family and to revel in those memories, which, you know, as the years go on, she feels are slipping away. So the only time she really physically properly gets to engage with her parents at the level that she feels comfortable with and that emotionally supports her, it's also the same place where she feels frightened, so she has to go. It's a shame. I can't believe I did that to her. It's awful.
It's also a strong narrative hook because we the readers, are wanting to know what is it that she can't get past and what is in that place then that she can't go to. And because you start quite early on giving us this idea of her going somewhere and having to stop, it's a very good it's a very good strategy in terms of keeping us reading. We want to know what happens, what stopped her, what is then. So it works really well. It works on different levels. And all right, move on to Ellen with her inner and outer voices. Maybe that's, well, I don't know whether that's a more familiar kind of split for many of us, the outer voice and the inner voice that conflict
I
or that.
think with Ellen, I think it is. I think it is something that's familiar, but I don't think people ever like think about it at that level. I don't
Yeah,
think people ever sort of stop to write it down and realize that that's what they're physically doing. Just to explain for anyone that's not read it yet, Ellen, she kind of has a lot of debates with herself. So in the way that we might think, okay, so like couple of seconds ago there, I looked at the clock and thought, right, wonder how we're doing for time in my head. I didn't say it out loud, but Ellen very much uses her inner voice as part of her. It's you know, she has conversations with herself, and to her, there's nothing kind of abnormal about that. You know, it's what she does, it's how she interacts, and um, Ellen for me is a really fascinating character because, you know, just like all people that I seem to write, has a really terrible past, and she's been really affected by it. And I think she didn't really start engaging with that inside outside voice until she was till something happened in her past, which I might read a bit later on if we get some time. But also, I was really fascinated while I was in the process of writing this book. I think there was a scientific discovery of something, and I've written it down because I keep forgetting what it's called, aphantasia. So, like, people in general, when they're thinking, they have a visual connection with what they're thinking about. You know, so I'll think about my house in Rathlin, you know, I mean, I can see it, I could, you know, I can visualize everything about it. But some people don't actually think in pictures at all. You know, like say you say you're counting, you know, sending a kid to sleep and saying count sheep. Well, you know, there are people that can't physically imagine a sheep
yeah.
jumping, you know, and I felt a little bit about like Ellen in that process because, you know, it's just coincidental, but maybe that's her. Maybe she doesn't have that kind of visual support. And, you know, so she's very much a talking and thinking person because she
Yes.
doesn't take a breath to actually kind of visualize anything that's happening. She's right in there with everything, wanting to debate it and converse about it. You know, she doesn't really take the sort of time to have some peace in her life. Um, and I can understand that about her character because, you know, she's had a bit of a bad rap, really.
She has a running commentary. It's like a running commentary that accompanies everything she does.
I
And
think anybody
it's
who's spent time with me though, Lynn, like, will probably realise that I do that actually quite a lot. You know, like just as I'm walking about, I'll say, right, I need to go, right, I'll go and put the kettle on, and then like, oh, I need to remember to take that washing out, and I kind of do that quite a lot, quite quite audibly, and I think I'm not the only person that does that. I think it is something that people do, and
yeah,
it's a kind of nice little trait really for Ellen because I think it gives her strength. You know, it's not a weakness for Ellen. It's company, it's support because she doesn't feel that she's got any support because you know, of what happened with her parents. And then obviously she doesn't feel that her relationship with Bracken, that she's getting what she needs from him, because she's in a relationship with Bracken, and Bracken wants to sell the home rather than sell Ballynoe, rather than tell his sister Rathlin about their relationship. So I think she's getting it from all sides. She feels very isolated, and she's only
Yes.
got herself really.
Are you going to read a bit of Ellen's?
Do you want me to read a bit of Ellen? Okay.
Well, only if had you thought of that?
Yeah, no, I've got a little bit. Hold your horses. We'll get there, guys. I've also got a wee bit of
Or Rathlin?
Rathlin's now and then, but I'll read this first. So this is Little Ellen, and I really like Ellen in my book. I think you could easily think, you know, she's a bit of a nasty piece of work, but I think we slowly get to know that she's not really a nasty piece of work. She just is somebody that really needs love, and she thought she has love with Bracken, so there's a little bit of uncertainty about that. You know, it just makes her react. And I think, you know, in a different world, I think Rathlin and Ellen would have been really the bestest of buddies. So this is going back to Ellen when she's just a little girl. She's 5 years old, and she's at home in Glasgow. So she's quite Ouija. So I have to read this in quite a Ouija accent. So forgive me if I sound really silly. My nose was scratchy, but I really didn't want my fingers to wake up, so I let the itch nip away at me till I couldn't bear it any longer. When that happened, my plan was just to wake up one of my fingers, the long one next to my thumb. But as soon as the pesky wee thing was scratching away at my nostrils, the rest of them joined in like a marching band, and before I knew it, my shoulders and elbows were out of the covers. I kept my eyes closed though, because then my sight wouldn't be awake, and I wouldn't have to see if my ma and da still hadn't come home. It's no that easy lying there hiding your sight, especially when the sun's got its big cherry hat on and sending its wide awake fingers through the curtains to yank my curls and tease me out of my sleep. I tried my best to ignore it, but I just gave in and let my sight out the dark, opening my eyes one by one as if I was writing Morse code. So that was my eyes, my fingers, and my elbows back in working order. So I thought I may as well take a wee start on my legs. I stretched them as long as I could, my toes wriggling like as if they were on the sand that I'd only been to one so long time ago that I couldn't really remember what it smelled like, just what it felt like, and that was all scratchy but hot and nice too. When I did stretch my toes, they broke out the covers and landed on a wee bit of sunlight that was tickling my bed, and for a teeny moment it was though I was on that beach again. I'm no a wee lassie, but I'm 5, and I know fine well the difference between pretend and real. But I wanted it to be pretend when I gave my legs a wee shake and tiptoed through to my man and dad's bedroom, telling the inside my head voice that they were going to be all curled up under the duvet. But the other inside my head voice was saying to me they wouldn't be there, and even though I didn't want it to be right, it was right, and I started greeting like a wee lassie. My ma and da were gone. They'd been missing for about a million years, said inside my head voice, until another inside my head voice said I wasn't to be stupid, as I'd seen them after school the day before when they'd given me a key, my own key, and told me I was a big lassie and could go home and pour some cold milk for the fridge onto a wee bowl of cereal they'd left me on the table in the kitchen. I said, "Oh no, what if wee Hamish eats it?" And my dad had tugged a wee pigtail at the back of my head and said, "Nah, he's no the kind of cat that's interested in Rice Krispies. He prefers cornflakes." And I breathed like a dozen sighs of relief because I was starving, or Hank Marvin, as one of the wee voices in my head said, in the exact same voice as my dad speaks in. My dad was dead right, spot on, as he would say, and Hamish wasn't interested in my Rice Krispies. He just wanted a wee cuddle as I ate them, us both holding our working ears close so we could hear the snack, snap, crackle, and pop song. I say my working ears because I'd chosen to turn them on. Sometimes I don't bother switching them on when I'm in the school and the teacher's going on and on about something that's no that interesting. Like God. Well, I quite like the stories about the manger and the 3 kings and presents for the wee baby Jesus. I mean, the God bit where we're having to learn prayers word for word and have to keep saying the same thing over and over and over. Sometimes when I'm doing that, I switch off my ears so they're no working, and then I switch off my tongue too so I don't have to say anything. I get my lips to stay on though, so it looks to my teacher that I'm joining in, but I don't let my outside voice do any work. Sometimes I don't know if there's any point in keeping my outside voice in because my inside voice is saying all the words anyway. Me and Hamish, we got hungry again during Green Chill, so I climbed up in the chair and I got the Rice Krispies and the cornflakes down at the cupboard. I poured Hamish's cornflakes first and I used my outside voice in a big shouty way to tell him to wait for me to pour my Rice Krispies, but he turned his ears off and started eating. He used his outside voice to purr while he was lapping up the milk, but he didn't eat the cornflakes, and I wondered if I maybe didn't have my ears turned up properly this morning when my dad said that was the cereal he liked. He didn't seem offended and he came and he curled up in my bed. Then all my things must have turned off by themselves because me and Hamish, we fell asleep. Then my nose itched, and that's me back at the beginning, standing at the bedroom door, looking at the big empty bed, with that stupid inside my head voice telling me that wee Ellen, she was abandoned.
Oh, I really like that one. I love that passage. I
Thank
remember
you.
that so well. With the little things waking up one at a time. I really like that. And it's one of the lighter parts, which leads me to my difficult question for you, Margot.
Oh,
I'm knowing you and knowing how confident and bubbly and sort of extrovert you are. I want to ask you why. This is really a dark novel and it's wrapped around family tragedy. And I wonder why you chose to go down such a very shady route. Uh, it's tough. It's quite tough reading in parts. I would say it's a dark book. So can you say
um,
something about that?
I think um, I think for a lot of people, I think quite a lot of people, life can be dark. And I think that what I'm writing is a reflection of a lot of people's inner demons. You know, I think the thing about this book is like I think I wanted to get below the politics of life, the broad politics, which I think we're all very much part of. I think particularly in Scotland, certainly since 2014, it's a very politically active place. We're very sorry, that's my dog. We're very politically aware of you know many aspects of life, and there's some of it trickles into this book. There's obviously reference to poverty and the Tories, and there is reference to the independence campaign. But I think underneath all that umbrella, which dictates our life, because policy dictates how we go about, legislation affects us on a day-to-day basis. But underneath that umbrella, we're living our own personal politics. And for a lot of people, personal politics can mean tragedy. And I think, there is humour in here as well, because I think certainly in my experience, both with Scottish and Irish people, we tend to deal with darkness with humour, but we don't
Mm,
shy away from the fact that darkness is very much part of who we are. What we do is we try and, we create scenarios around it that support us. And those scenarios are how we engage with family, with friends, with community, with arts, with lots of different things. So I think yeah, it's about personal politics, and I think for me, darkness is very much part of that, on so many levels for so many people.
I think it's brave of you to have been that honest and not to have lightened it. You could have lightened it in places and you didn't. And I see it as courageous. It's a courageous piece of writing that you've you've sustained the darkness through most of it. And yeah, it's an honesty, it's an integrity that you show in telling the story.
Yeah, I know that when we were going through the edit stage, and we talked a lot about the ending of the book, and I think all of
Mm-hmm,
us that were working on it, agreed that it went where it had to go,
mm-hmm,
because that was the underbelly of what the story was trying to do and to share. Um, I think anything else, it wouldn't have been the characters. I mean, Rathlin and Bracken and Ellen and Anita to a certain extent, on the outside of it, and Sky and Joe, like, they are who they are, not not in spite of the darkness, but I think, alongside the darkness. and I don't think that it's not necessarily destroyed them. I'll tread carefully by saying that, but I don't know. It might sound silly to say, but it kind of adds to them. I think the darkness and their experience shapes them as human beings.
I'm going to hop over a question and link what you've just said to a final thing I want to ask you. And settings Kintyre, your characters talk in a dialect which is it's Scots. Would you say this is a Scottish novel, or is that
Mm-hmm.
label unhelpful? Is it helpful or unhelpful to call it a Scottish novel? And then I'd like to bring in some other questions, make this my last.
Um, I guess like just being really sort of crude about it, it's a Scottish novel if we're trying to sell it in Scotland. It's an Irish novel, we're selling it in Scotland. No, I'm only joking. Um, is it a Scottish novel? I think it's a Celtic novel.
Okay.
I think that they're very much part of their family tree, and that family tree is like mine. It's kind of embedded in roots that cross that Irish sea. It's very much Scottish and Irish. Um, but I think it's a novel about people, and I think these people could be anywhere with their own particular vernacular. It just so happens that the Glaswegian vernacular and maybe Bracken Scots language kind of define them as people because it's added different layers to who they are. But that could be, it could be any, they could be from Yorkshire. I don't think it. Well, maybe I don't know actually because I think there is certainly that Scottish Irish kind of humour in their dialect that I think is kind of pinpoints it to that. So sorry, I didn't really answer that question.
You did. I was linking it to what you said about the darkness and the Celtic twilight. I'm going to pick up some questions now. They're coming in quite fast and we haven't got very long. Hilary McCullum wants to know, when you were writing it, what came first, the theme or the characters?
Oh, characters. I'm always very character driven.
Yeah.
It was the first part of the story. My twin brother, he was actually born, he was a forceps delivery, and he does have like a kind of birthmark, which is sometimes there and sometimes not. So that kind of reimagining of his birth and, that kind of wow, that trauma of the way he arrived into life, along with my own daughter when I had her, it was quite a traumatic birth as well. So I think the twins then kind of shaped for me that this story had to be sort of centered around that beginning of how they were separated, and then that separation, continues as a theme throughout their entire lifetime. I should also mention as well here that my daughter has subsequently had twins, and I take responsibility for that because I obviously wrote them into this book, and then when she fell pregnant, there was no way she was having anything other than twins.
Okay, another one for you. From Helen McKinben. Um, did you find writing a dark novel emotionally draining?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I think, Helen, you kind of, I know that you're a writer as well, and you do write some kind of dark stuff too. I don't think you find it emotionally draining at the time of writing because when I write, I kind of heard Jenny Fagan talking about this and some other writers, and I didn't really know what it was until she explained it. But I do kind of go into a zone. I do genuinely go into another place. Not all the time, because not every time you sit down and write are you going to lose yourself in it. Sometimes you sit there for like 3 years and you write one sentence and it's the same sentence and it's agonizing and you're like, why am I writing? I hate it. But other times you just become completely consumed by what you're doing. So I think I do genuinely sort of go into that other space where it's just right, 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 right. But I think where the emotional draining side of that comes is, when you get through to the editing process, and I guess you realize what you've done, And when you're kind of going through that side of it, it can be emotional because I guess as writers, we don't always just make stuff up because there's little tiny bits of life experience in there. And I guess that resonates with you when you do look at it from a purely factual point of view and looking for typos and stuff. Hope that answers Helen.
Helen Forbes has left a comment to say the writing's beautiful, Margot. And I can't wait to read Almost Then. And are you working on anything else new or now? Are you working on
Yes,
anything else now?
I am. I'm about 30,000 words into a new novel, which is at that exciting stage of it where it has lots of lovely potential. So we'll see where that goes, and we'll see if Lynn likes that one. Might be coming your way soon. Yeah, I think writing is just like, I don't know, is it an addiction? But it's certainly something that I don't really have any control over. And if a story comes, then you're away with it. I just wish I had more time to do it. So if anybody has a lottery win and wants to donate some winnings to me so that I can write full time, then I will accept it. Thank you.
If only. There's a question from Ali Bacon, but I think this isn't. It says, just thinking that although this is a book about twins, we hear only Rathlin's side. Did you ever think of giving Brecken a voice in the narrative?
Yeah.
Or was it always about the women? But Brecken does have
Bracken did. I think he's got one tiny little bit of voice towards the end. But yeah, he did. Originally, when I started writing it, I was kind of writing from both their perspectives. I was writing from Rathlin's and Bracken's perspectives, but then Ellen came through much stronger and stronger and stronger, and it became her story rather than Bracken's. So I'm afraid he kind of got bombed out. There's also a tiny little bit of I feel much more comfortable writing a woman than I do a man, to be honest.
He's very much there, Margot.
Yeah, no, he's very part of it because he is part of Rathlin. So she's representing him at all times because, her kind of raison d'etre is like, protect my brother, like I don't want anything to hurt him, which is why, she has this whole kind of distrust towards Ellen. She doesn't really understand the situation. So he does have a presence, but yeah, so his chapters got ditched, I'm afraid. And I think it's stronger for it.
I feel his presence is very physical. He has a strong physical presence. His colouring, his build, his limp, his aches and pains that because he's not fully fit. He has a very strong physical presence. So we can see him, even if we don't always hear him in the way we hear the women who make explicit everything that they're thinking. So he's very much there in the novel. And I think Ali will find him when she.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, if I was to kind of conceptualize Rathlin and Bracken and kind of other beings, I kind of always seen Rathlin as the raven. She's very much there, very much dominant in everyone's space. Whereas I think Bracken more like a seal. You can see what you see is only part of their existence, and they have this other life under the water. And for me, that's where Bracken's the other part of his life that maybe he's held back a little bit that we don't explore. But we see that kind of one part of him. Yeah, sorry, that might have just confused it, but that's how my crazy mind works. Sorry.
Well, as you can all tell, it's a complex book. There's a lot in Almost Then. It's not a quick. It's not one of those books branded as the most page-turning, whatever, the Times best-selling, whatever, that keeps coming up on my Kindle and drives me around the bend. This is a book that you will get your teeth into, and you'll stay inside it and take your time to get through it. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating read. And So all I can say is I'm very, very pleased that it came my way, and I've had the fun of working with Margot on it, and that now we've come to the end of that journey, and the book's out there for you all. So unless anyone's got another question, I think we've more or less run out of time, haven't we? How long have we got? Jania, how are we doing? A minute?
Yep, we've got a couple of minutes.
Couple of minutes. Anything else?
Oh, somebody's just joining. Oops.
I should say thank you too to the two at the top there. Sarah and Chania are part of the Linen Press team. Couldn't do without them, either of them. The wonderful Wave, Chania and Sarah. Absolute delight to be with you and to have you working with us. Right, Hilary McCullum has said good luck, and
Thank you.
I think anything else?
I just really want to say thank you to everyone again. I know I did at the start, but it does mean a lot. I think I know there's quite a few writers on here. You know that it's quite an isolated thing to do. You know, you write all these words and then you do it for an audience, and then as soon as you've got an audience, you're absolutely bricking it. I was going to say something else, but I was very tame there. And so it's nice to have that support. And yeah, I just want people to read it. So if you can share the word and tell your pals and say to people, look, read it, take your own point of view, have your own opinion. I would really, really appreciate it. But thank you for taking your time out to be with me tonight. I'm getting all emotional.
I want to thank you all too. Thank you very much for coming. It is good to have a community and all of us to see the book on its way. There's lovely comments coming in now saying thank you, and people have enjoyed it. So we'll say bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Helen.
Thanks very much, everybody. I really appreciate it.